Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. We've got a lot of information to cover, and we want to give ourselves at least a little bit of time for questions and answers along the way. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's webcast titled Better Together, brought to you by EPM Live and K2. Just a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover before we go ahead and get started here. All the lines on today's broadcast are muted. And should you have questions along the way, we do encourage you to use the question and answer panel. And we have two others from K2, Tamarin and Michelle, that will be helping us moderate today's webcast. So if you have any questions at all, again, feel free to use the Q&A panel in your GoToMeeting control panel. They're on the right-hand side of your machine. The session is going to be recorded, and we'll make that available online in about 24 hours. So if you have to drop off a little early, or if you have folks within the organization that were not able to attend, you can use the recording to send that to them, and they'll be able to view it on demand. We'll also give ourselves just a couple of minutes after the session, towards the end, for any questions that we don't get to in the Q&A panel. So if you'd like to ask a question, or if you'd like for us to open up the phone lines, we'll hopefully have a couple of minutes to be able to do that. Real quick here, as far as introductions go, would like to tell you a little bit more about EPM Live as well as K2. Some of you might be familiar with both organizations, but some of you may already be familiar with EPM Live or just K2. So I want to spend just a few minutes talking a little bit more about who we are and what we do. My name is Matt Wilson. I am with EPM Live. I'm the Director of Partner Strategy. And today I also have Michelle Salazar, who's with K2, and she's a technical specialist, and she's going to be helping us with the demonstration. I'd first off like to begin by telling you a little bit more about EPM Live and who we are and what we do. And we've been in the project and portfolio management business now for about 14 years, and have been Microsoft partners for about 12 of those years. And we've served on the Partner Advisory Council. We've worked very closely with the field and with corporate. And we have a very strong understanding of not only the Microsoft stack in general, but specifically, Microsoft Project Server and SharePoint. Our experience goes, back to about 5,000 customers. We've done implementations of both Project Server, SharePoint, and even our own product in over 35 different countries. We've been recognized by a lot of the industry experts, Gartner being one of them. Microsoft, of course, recognizing us for the work that we've done around SharePoint and around EPM Live. And from a partner perspective, we've got about 125 EPM Live partners around the world in over 33 different countries. So EPM Live, in essence, is essentially a global brand, and we do have, folks in parts of Europe, in the UK, and other parts of the world that, can help our customers take advantage of our technology. Just a couple of things as we get started here. For those of you that might not already be familiar with EPM Live, there's just a couple of things that that really sort of sets us apart from all the other project and portfolio management tool sets that are in the marketplace today. The first thing is that our product helps an organization basically manage all work across every aspect in the organization. Now, one of the things that we've realized in our years of being in this space and working with clients and helping them manage their portfolios and their resources is that the work is not only within a project plan, but the work that they also have to manage is outside that project plan in other parts of the business. So we designed a tool that took that into consideration, that not only helped them manage projects across an entire life cycle, but we also wanted to help them manage work that resources might already be assigned to outside those project plans. The other thing that we realized in our experience too is that there are different levels of project management maturity across the different spectrums within the organization. Not any one organization is at the same level of maturity as another. And so we wanted to build a product that not only took into consideration the different levels of maturity, but allowed these organizations to cohabitate on a single platform without really forcing one or the other one to be at a certain level of maturity. The other thing that we also did was we built an end-to-end solution. A lot of our clients that we work with today understand not only the importance of project management, but they also understand the importance of portfolio management as well. And so we wanted to give them the broad range of capabilities and the full end-to-end spectrum of being able to effectively manage not only their portfolios but their projects. And so as an end result, we've developed a platform that helps them manage their strategic portfolio investments as well as their tactical project and work management investments. And in other words, it's a system that is designed to help them manage their investments from cradle to grave. And the beauty about the way that we actually have this set up is that you can actually pick and choose which capabilities in the spectrum that you want to go ahead and take advantage of. So if those parts of the organization that want to use the portfolio management capabilities can do that. Meanwhile, other parts of the organization may only want to focus on the tactical and the work management features. And those are capabilities that they can very easily consume and embrace. Now, last but not least, the last thing we wanted to do, because SharePoint is one of the fastest growing products in the history of Microsoft, the install base today is just unbelievable. And so we wanted to have our clients that are using SharePoint, or those clients that are using SharePoint, take full advantage of that platform and extend it in a way that allowed them to manage projects and resources and portfolios directly within that SharePoint environment. So that way customers can continue to use SharePoint the way that they currently use it today, but we have some value-added capabilities that we're bringing to that platform that allow them to manage their investments, allow them to manage their projects, their resources, and their costs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today and show you a little bit of that in today's demonstration. And so as an end result, we have 3 products that we're going to market with today. Specifically, what we're going to be talking about is a work engine product, but we have a single integrated platform built on SharePoint that helps organizations manage projects and resources and costs at all different levels of maturity and different work types. And so as an end customer, if you're not already using EPM Live, you can choose between 3 different products that we have in our product set. Our project engine capabilities, which are really just focused at tactical and project management. Our work engine solution really moves more towards the enterprise governance, and it helps organizations implement standards and improve visibility across multiple projects and across portfolios. And then we have our portfolio engine product, which really helps an organization focus specifically on that portfolio management, that investment management, and portfolio optimization prioritization. Right? So depending on where you are within the organization, the kind of work that you have to manage, the level of maturity that you're at, and what your specific needs are, we have different capabilities and different products that can scale to meet those needs. And it's all integrated on the SharePoint 2010 platform, which is really, really nice. So moving right into the purpose of today's call, obviously there's if you think about the portfolio management world, there really are 2 really key things, or 2 important things that our customers look into. Number 1, they look at balancing their investments. In other words, how do we make the right investments into the right projects and the right initiatives? Big question a lot of organizations are asking themselves today. And then the other aspect that they look at is because every investment that is made, there is inherent risk. So how do we manage the risks with the investments that we make? So today what we want to basically show you is how we essentially help organizations gain visibility into competing priorities. So one of the things that we'll also look at when Michelle goes through her demonstration is actually looking at how workflow can actually enable a portfolio management process and give visibility into new ideas and new projects as they come up throughout the organization. The other thing that we'll also look at in the demonstration is how you can gain visibility into risks and issues that happen during the course of the project. And one of the biggest challenges that we see with a lot of organizations is, number 1, they don't have visibility into new projects and new ideas, and number 2, they have very little visibility into risks and issues that are affecting their projects today. So what we want to do is basically show you how the combination of both K2 and EPM Live can help address some of the portfolio management challenges that you might be experiencing today, as well as some of the risk management challenges that you might be faced with as you make these investments into these projects. Now, what we'll be showing, what Michelle will be showing, is how workflow can enable a governance process, and with the combination of SharePoint and EPM Live, being able to centralize all these requests and all these projects within SharePoint, and then enabling workflow on the back end to be able to facilitate an approval process and have that sort of be routed to different stakeholders and allow them to get involved with decision making and with some of the risk management protocols. So in doing that, what I would like to do now is hand it off to Michelle, and Michelle can tell you a little bit more about K2 and also talk to us, or at least give us an idea of what we're going to be looking at later on today in our demonstration. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. Again, as Matt said, I'm Michelle Salazar, and I'm a technical specialist here with K2. And what we put together with EPM Live that we'll show you a little bit down the road here, putting together K2 and EPM Live to leverage SharePoint to manage those project portfolios. So before I get into that, just a quick introduction for those of you that are not familiar with K2. K2 is a platform for automating process-driven applications. Today we're going to talk about those processes that live around the project portfolio, the project management environment. But again, K2 is a platform for automating processes. We are a global company with over 3,000 customers in more than 54 countries worldwide. Now, we were founded in about 2000, and our headquarters is currently located in Redmond, Washington, near Microsoft. We say near Microsoft because we have a very deep integration across the Microsoft platform, and we'll see that specifically today around that SharePoint environment and show you some of the integration, not only with EPM Live from a project portfolio perspective, but also how we can leverage some of SharePoint and EPM Live together in building this scenario. Also, just some of the quick recognition we received. Last year we were awarded Best of Tech Ed, which we're very excited to hear that we've been announced as a finalist for 2012. So that should be coming up in June here. Anyway, that's just a little bit about K2. Let's talk about why K2 and what it is that we provide around that. And Matt, I'm just trying to switch to the next slide here. Or you can switch me to the next slide, that's fine. Great, thank you. So as I mentioned, K2 is a platform, so it's more than just building pretty boxes and lines about building that process. It's an entire platform that allows you to not only integrate people, processes, and line of business, but also manage that from an administrative perspective and really take a good look at how your processes are running. Our platform makes it easy to build workflows and these process-driven applications to increase business efficiency. We really enable business people with visual tools and technical people with tools they know as well. And when I get into the design experience and we show you what we've done together with EPM Live, we'll start showing you how easy it is to build these processes. And again, today we're focusing on project portfolios. But again, K2 is process, is not related to any specific process, which means it can be reused for other processes in your organization. Everything in K2 is visual, declarative, and reusable. In addition, K2 bridges and extends Microsoft. Again, we'll see that in the SharePoint environment, but also with other technologies that may exist in your infrastructure. As part of the demonstration today, we're actually going to see the ability to integrate with line of business systems and actually retrieve information to surface onto a form, and maybe in some cases update that information to that line of business system. So again, what sets us kind of apart is the ability to integrate with multiple line of business systems. And finally, we realize it's not just about reporting, it's interacting with the business. Therefore, K2 includes the full audit and reporting capabilities. And again, being able to integrate with those line of business systems and pull that together with workflow information allows you to create a nice dashboard of what's really going on in your process as it relates to my business. So we'll see some of that in today's presentation. And next slide, please, Matt. Thank you. All right, so how do we do that? I mentioned the ability for business users and technical users to build workflows, and here's part of that design experience. We offer 3 different designers within K2. A designer inside of that SharePoint environment, so if you're looking to build SharePoint-specific workflows or inside of that SharePoint environment, you can use our designer for SharePoint. We also have K2 Studio, which is a standalone designer. This is actually targeted for somebody a little bit more advanced in building workflows. And then finally, the K2 developer, As you would imagine, this is surfaced inside of Visual Studio, where you have full TSS support and project referencing and debugging, etc. Again, depending on the skill set that you possess, you're able to use the different designer. And next slide, Matt. So in addition to the design experience, again, we're going back to that platform, that full process lifecycle. You can do things with user security, so setting process rights, instance management. So if I have an instance out and running, I want to take a look at that, as well as process versioning. So if I want to change between different versions in a process, very easy to do within the K2 platform. And next slide, please. And finally, automating that process and tracking and knowing what's going on. There are a number of out-of-the-box reports that help you visualize how your process is running, and we'll see some of that today, whether it's an end user wanting to see what step we're on in a process to maybe an administrator seeing if there are any bottlenecks in a process. So again, we'll see a culmination of some of those items in today's demonstration. Next slide, Matt. All right, so in this scenario, go ahead and click through this if you'd like. We're going to actually go through the demonstration between EPM Live and K2 and putting together what Matt kind of talked about from a project perspective, being able to submit a new request for a project, because there are literally a number of projects that need to be created and run, but how do we know which one should be run first? Are we within budget for that? Are there risks associated to those projects? And again, that requires some kind of an approval process. And so we're going to show you that today. We're going to have a project getting requested. We'll evaluate the budget against not only the budget for that project, but against a number of projects that are similar. So we'll actually run an average and compare that budget. And we're going to actually K2 perform a calculation to determine an average budget related to all tasks or projects that are of similar type. And then we'll also go into a risk analysis where we have an executive sponsor evaluate that budget and that risk to determine if this project indeed does need to be kicked off. Once we do have that project approved and it's gone through the K2 process, this is where we'll integrate with EPM Live and actually use EPM Live templates to generate a project portfolio for that project that was requested. So we'll see that get created by K2. And at that point, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Matt to talk a little bit about that once we get into that demonstration and show you, once that project is created, now what can we do with that. If you want to go to the next slide, Matt. So here's actually an outline of what that project or that process looks like from a K2 perspective using the design tools. You can see it's very graphical, and we'll see this actually come into play when we're, as an end user, walking through this scenario. Automatic role assignment in our process or our example today, we're actually specifying who the approvers are. However, K2 can integrate again with whether it's Active Directory, SQL database, or another user management tool to determine who those users are and who should be approving those tasks. They'll also receive notifications that they have a task, maybe for escalations as well. And then upon approval, the project will automatically get created. You'll notice in the center here that we actually do have some analysis, taking place between that budget and the average budget. And this is where K2 is taking that out of the hands of the person that's approving the project so that they don't have to go compare it against additional projects. So K2 is going to actually provide an average, and if that person approves, if the business sponsor approves that, K2 is going to make sure that that budget is within the budget for a similar project type. If it's not, we're going to go down to the next level for a finance approver to evaluate that budget. Now the next screen, thanks, Matt. In addition to the request of a project, we'll also do some things to manage that project, like risk management. So there are certain things that come up with when a project is running or it's being created, things are running, but scenarios tend to come up that affect the project and have some risk around that completion. And we're going to have K2 capture some of that as well. Again, similar type of scale for using and seeing the process as it's designed out here. Again, that automatic role assignment, depending on what type of risk it is, maybe it gets routed to a different user altogether. And for every site that gets created, as we created those project templates using EPM Live, they are workflow enabled. So as things occur, specifically in this risk management, as a new risk is added, a process is kicked off. And then finally, we have risk assessments based on different KPIs. So what we see here is the ability to go down a different path depending on the risk. So if the risk is within a certain KPI, we want to go ahead and send a task to a user to manage that risk. If that risk is greater than that KPI, maybe it involves an executive approval. And in that case, maybe it's even a project stopper, which involves an entirely new process. So again, a sub-process within a process to evaluate the level of that risk and determine if we need to actually stop this project and figure out what we need to do next. So again, a lot going on in these two scenarios, and we'll try to keep it as simple as possible to make it easier to follow along. So the project we're going to go through is a project request approval and then a risk management process. So to get started with that, I'm going to go ahead and hopefully get my image here. Just trying to switch scenarios here, screens. There we go. All right, so I've got the EPM Live template. And Matt, if you can just chime in real quickly and let me know if it's coming through, what kind of lag I've got from that perspective.
Looks really good.
Okay, thanks. All right, so this is a dashboard, the EPM Live dashboard that shows us pretty much the home page. I can see a K2 kind of work list that shows me any tasks that have been assigned to me. And I've also got the ability to see projects by state. So again, some of that reporting perspective coming into play from a both EPM Live and K2 perspective, allowing me to see what's going on in my entire environment, whether I've got processes that are running. I want to see issues that have been selected, so I want to see what those statuses are. And again, this really nice dashboard that shows me everything that's going on in my environment. So to kick off this demonstration, I need to kick off a new project request. So I'm going to go into the Project Center request area. And here you can see I've got different projects that have been requested, approved. Some of them are completed or pending. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open up a new request. And what you see is an info path form pop up. K2 is forms agnostic, which means that we can use a K2 form, an info path form like we see here, or even a SharePoint list form. So depending on how and what you want to present to your user, this comes into play as a decision from a designer perspective. What do we want to show our end users when they're filling out these forms, and what information do we need to already surface to them from that form perspective? So I'm going to go ahead and start filling out some of this information for this particular request. And we'll just do a mobile apps upgrade. And we'll put a project description, enable mobile interaction. And then, of course, the benefits are increased visibility. Now, as further metadata around this project request, we're going to keep it in the request state. And again, this is something that we can retrieve as far as integrating with line of business systems to surface information into this form. For instance, the project type. If we have new project types come up, we don't have to change the form. In this case, we might want to query a SharePoint list and surface that information into this particular drop-down list. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and put a project type. Improve efficiency sounds great. And let's just assign some ownership here to some of these areas. Our executive sponsor, in this case, will be Adam Jabbar. And a few more areas to fill out here. Our business sponsor. There we go. Now, I'm typing or hard coding these approvers, if you will, or these sponsors in, but again, depending on the type of project, K2 can automatically determine, depending on if you set that in your system, to determine who the approvers are for a particular project type. So if it's support system, maybe the owners and the executive sponsors are different than for this, for an enhancement type of a project. So again, in this case, I'm showing you an example of how you can actually interject who the process owners are. So these tasks will get delivered based on what we're entering on this form here. All right, so it looks like we've got our form filled out, at least the necessary components for our particular request here. So at this point, we can see we've got now a new request that's pending our mobile apps upgrade. Now, the first person I assigned this to as far as that business sponsor was Mr. Bishop. So I'm going to go ahead and open up his browser. And I'm not sure I can see that down below here. Matt, are you able to see the area below there? Where it shows my users?
Let's see. Oh yeah, I do. I do see that. So let me just.
If you can just open up Mr. Bishop for me, please.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Perfect. And hopefully I've got control back. All right, so now we've logged in as Mr. Bishop here. Steve can also, or Scott can also receive an email indicating, hey, you've got a task assigned to you. He can even open up that email, respond in that email saying approve, decline, or whatever his option might be, and move that task forward. In this case, I wanted to show you a K2 work list, and this is where really you can see all tasks that have been assigned to you regardless of what process it is. Remember, K2 can work with any type of process. In our case today, we're working with project portfolios. But those process and those tasks would show up in our K2 work list here, which really gives us a nice visibility into all tasks. I don't have to go search my emails to find tasks that have been assigned to me. I don't have to search SharePoint to find any tasks. They're all in one place. You have a unified little work area here. And we surface that inside of the EPM Live work engine area so we can see everything all at once in one place. Some things you can do from the work list perspective, from the K2 perspective, is if I've got this task assigned to me, but it's really supposed to be going to somebody else based on certain decisions that are being made, I can redirect this task to another user. I can also delegate this task. So if I delegate that task, I can choose another user whom I want to see this. So if, in this case, I want to delegate this to maybe Eric or maybe Adam. So we've got Adam here. So I can delegate this task to Adam, and then I can also specifically define what actions do I want Adam to perform on my behalf when he's looking at this task. So if my signature obviously needs to be on this approval, but I do need Adam to go take a look at this, I'm going to go remove that signature option, the approve option, and allow him to open up this task and decline it as he sees fit. So once I click OK here, this task will also, in addition, be assigned to Adam. You can see it still shows up on my task list, and that's because I didn't remove or redirect the entire process. I just delegated a portion of that. Other things we can see is the ability to look at a view flow or a process view. So one of those out-of-the-box reports from K2 for an end user that allows you to see where we are in that process. And you can see, again, this looks very familiar from our PowerPoint slide. It's the same process that was built out. We can see we have the business sponsor approval. I can open that up as well and take a look at those participants. Remember, I signed it to Adam as well. So everything that's occurring in your process, from when I'm redirecting tasks to different users, when those users actually open up that task, even if they haven't actioned that date and timestamp is being captured. So we can get some nice user performance statistics. We can get some nice process level statistics from just this report alone. And again, there are a number of out-of-the-box reports that give you a culmination of metrics and data that you can start really visualizing what's going on in your environment. So we'll leave this running, and I'm just going to minimize this screen here because we're going to actually watch that change spots as we go through the process. All right, so let's go ahead and open up our first level of approval. You can see here I can also approve it and decline it directly. But in this case, I want to show you some of the things that K2 has done to surface information to this end user. In this case, we see, again, another info path form. And again, you can make these forms look however you would like them to look. But we brought some of the information from our initial request into this form. So we're surfacing additional information as well as making sure we specify start and end date. So we're going to go ahead and start this beginning of June and make sure that we're completed by maybe even the end of July. You can see our approvers, so we know who's actually going to receive this task once we finish this. And again, at this point, you can also interject additional approvals if necessary. So If I wanted different users to approve depending on certain states, I can inject that here as well from a forms perspective, or have K2 do that for me behind the scenes. In addition, here's some project comparisons, and this is where K2, and this is just kind of an example of what K2 is showing you from the perspective of what we can do with data behind the scenes. So K2 actually pulled back an average. So K2 actually calculated an average of existing similar projects to determine what strategic alignment this project is comparing to. We also see a duration and a budget. In our case, I want to go above the expected budget so that we can go through our next step of approval. But you can see here that if we approve this and we didn't know that budget, K2 would automatically determine that budget and route it to the next user. In our case, I'm showing that to this user so that we can see the capacity of K2 in how it retrieves data and how it can help you manage those decisions without having somebody to actually go do that calculation themselves. Let's go ahead and approve this particular task. So we've increased the budget for this task, and we would expect this to go on to our next level of approval. So we're done with Scott here for the moment. And Matt, if you'll go ahead and grab my next user. I think it would be Steve.
Sure thing. Let me do one thing here.
Ah, better. I've got that now.
Got
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Perfect. That's perfect. Before I actually grab the next user, I'm going to show you real quickly that we did move to the next level, to the finance sponsor. Now, the finance sponsor can go and open up that task. Let's go ahead and do that, because there's additional information that the finance sponsor needs to look at, because that budget is above the expected budget for a similar project. So we've got our task list again. So let's go ahead and just open up that task real quickly. Now we've got a different view of that form with that information filled out from our previous user, as well as the risk assessment, etc. So from this perspective, I'm going to go ahead and just set the risk to be 3 and go to the next level, and we'll just quickly approve the next user as well. But again, being able to see and what kind of information and what kind of risks are being assessed as we're actually approving these processes is really nice visibility into the number of projects that we might have outstanding and that are currently running. So if this project is a risk to other projects, we might want to see that ahead of time, or at least have K2 route that accordingly, which it's doing now, to make a really appropriate decision on should we actually be running this project. So lastly, I'm going to open up Adam, and we're just going to go ahead and approve Adam directly from the task list itself. We'll open up his task list. And again, any of these users can receive that email, and in that email they can respond directly with their appropriate action of approve, decline, etc. So let's go ahead and just action this task directly. We don't need to open up this task. Let's just go ahead and approve it. And as you can see, we can even send it back to the approvers. So if we're not sure we want to actually approve this, we can send it back to maybe that finance approver to have them take another good look at this task before they send it through. So as you can see, we've gone through the executive sponsor, and now we've created that project center. So at this point, what's happening is K2 is now calling a sub-process, and that sub-process is actually loading up an EPM Live template and creating a project site for that project that we've just created here. So we can see that we can actually even open up that additional project or process and take a look to see all the steps that are going on in creating. And some of the integration here with SharePoint and EPM Live are taking place as I'm talking through this. We're integrating with SharePoint lists. We're creating a new project site. So again, we can create those project sites within the same project site or server or across the board. So again, some of that integration that's going on as I'm speaking to this particular project. So I'm going to go ahead and close down our process flow there and open up a new browser and just kind of show you what's happened since this new project is getting created. The first thing I'm going to do is go into our request to actually see that we did update the request. So we're going from a request kind of status to now that project is fully implemented and ready to get kicked off. we can see our approved status for our mobile apps upgrade. We've just created that. It's now completed. And to be sure of that, I'm going to go into my project center with all my projects, and I'm going to turn this over to Matt in just a minute here to talk a little bit about what you can do now that this project is created. So real quickly, I'm going to go into our project that was created by K2. And I believe I put that under support. There's our mobile apps upgrade. If I click on that, we should now see a project template so that we can go in and start managing this project from the beginning to the end. So Matt, I'm going to go ahead and turn that back over to you and talk a little bit about, now that we've got that project site created, what can we do with managing that portfolio?
Okay, cool. Very cool. Thanks, Michelle. So basically what we're looking at right now is a workspace that's been created directly within EPM Live. One of the really nice things about what we're doing here from an EPM Live perspective is we're utilizing all the native facilities directly within SharePoint. The cool part about that is what you're already used to today, what you're seeing now really isn't all that different. What we're simply doing is adding more functionality. In this particular case, within this particular workspace, this workspace was created specifically for this project. So as the demand comes in through the organization, as you go through your portfolio management approval process and you assess risk and budget, and you know, those items do get approved, what happens is the system would automatically generate a workspace to where team members, executive stakeholders, and anyone else that's involved on the project, they would have the opportunity to basically manage any information about that particular project in one single location. So in this particular instance, following on to Michelle's demonstration here, we have the mobile apps upgrade. You'll notice here that there's a variety of different things that we can do now. We can look at an overview of the project. We can take a look at all the tasks. As a matter of fact, we actually have integration directly with Microsoft Project. So if you're looking at, in other words, building you know, a project schedule, there's a number of different ways that you can do that. So you can either use MS Project, which we have full integration for, which basically means that if you have anyone within the organization that uses Project today to build and author schedules and plans, they can continue to do that within SharePoint and within EPM Live specifically. Or they can also have the opportunity to use what we call the Work Planner, and the Work Planner is basically a scaled-down version of MS Project, completely web-based, and provides the same function, which is basic project management 101, scheduling, task management, and resource management. Right, so we now have that ability here once we have this particular workspace, and following along here on this navigation bar, you'll notice that we have an area where we can look at all the resources that might be assigned to this particular task. You know, again, risks and issues, changes. Maybe there might be some status reports that we have to complete on a weekly or a monthly basis. You may actually have some custom lists that or work items that you want to be able to track. So they could be action items, links to other sites, maybe some special team announcements relating to the project. You know, there could be a variety of different things that you could track here in this workspace, and then of course the native document management and artifact management that comes with SharePoint. You know, again, we're taking full advantage of that, and then we also have the reporting capabilities here at this level. Now, the way that we actually have EPM Live designed is that we have a parent and a child site hierarchy, and what we're simply looking at is the site, the children's site. So in other words, the workspace for this project. Now, one of the really nice things about what we're doing within EPM Live is we actually have the ability to aggregate excuse me, multiple projects, multiple work items and resources and costs and requests, in this case, to a single dashboard view. And coming back into the Project Center, where we're at right now is basically the parent level, or what we call the site collection level. So again, if you think about it in terms of parent and child, what we were at just a few seconds ago was a child site, but what we can do now is we can come to the aggregate site, which gives us visibility into all the projects, all the work items, and all the requests that we have in our queue. So as an executive stakeholder, someone that needs to make decisions about projects, or even someone that has responsibility of managing these projects, I can come to one place in my site collection, come to a single dashboard, and see, in essence, everything that I'm responsible for and everything that's relevant to me as an end user. You'll notice that we have our your typical performance status indicators. Some organizations might want to be able to track overall alignment to corporate goals and objectives. They might also want to track risk as well. We have schedule status indicators, budget, work, start and finish dates, percent completes. Again, just demonstrating here that we're fully integrated with SharePoint. We have a variety of different SharePoint list views that you can create that will essentially expose a variety of different data points to the end user. And because we are, again, fully integrated with SharePoint, you have the opportunity to take advantage of permissions and groups and securities and things like that. So if there are certain things that you want an audience to see, you can enable that through views and permissions. If there's other things that you may not want them to see, again, you can control that directly within some of the SharePoint permissions. Okay. The other thing that we're also doing here with the Resource Center, which is really nice about this whole process, is once the projects have been approved, the next step usually is building out your resource team. For a lot of organizations, that does become a challenge because 9 times out of 10 they don't really have any visibility into what people are working on. And so, coming back to the core concept of why we've designed EPM Live, we wanted to have a place where people can go and get everything they need about their projects and about their resources. And so, if you think about it in terms of self-serve, a resource manager or even a project manager can come to EPM Live or come to SharePoint in this case with EPM Live, and they can very quickly see all their resources and see exactly what their resources are currently working on today. So what we're going to do here is we'll select just a few resources. I think we've got some data here for Adam and Steve. And we'll just deselect these folks here. And we're going to go ahead and view the resource plan because the first thing I want to do is, number one, I want to make sure that we have the right resources. And then number two, as I'm building out this plan, now that it's been approved, I want to go ahead and make sure that these resources have the availability that I need them for, at least during the time frame that I need them, right? The last thing I'm going to want to do is over-allocate anyone because that does nothing for my project or any of the other projects that are assigned to. So it's my responsibility now as a project manager at this point to make sure I've got the right skill sets and these resources are available. So you'll see here real quickly that down at the bottom here we actually have a histogram. What the histogram does is it presents information about the resources' current level of staffing and allocation. So if we're looking at assigning, let's go ahead and deselect Steve here and Adam. Obviously we don't have any data down here, but if we go ahead and select Adam, you'll notice here that if we picked up a project or if we wanted to go ahead and assign him to a project between the June and the October time frame, he looks like he's about 50% allocated, so I know I can count on him at that point, within that time frame. Now, let's take a look at Steve Masters and see what his availability might look like. He looks pretty good too. So, as a project manager, if I need him for at least 50% of his time or maybe less, I know that I can count on either Adam or Steve Masters to commit to my project. However, if there were cases where there were some over allocations, and I think we might actually think we have any in this particular demo. However, if there were, we'd obviously see the excess allocations above this 100% line, and it would automatically indicate to me, or at least visually indicate to me, that look, these resources over allocated. There's, if you do assign them, there's something does have to give, and we have to talk to people and figure things out. So it very quickly gives people visibility into where people are assigned to. Now, what's also really cool about this is if I open up Steve Masters, his responsibilities, and we'll just go to that particular task here. There's a variety of things that we can do here if for some reason we needed to move him around or we need to change or do some what-if analysis here, just so that we can get him to work on our project. I can very easily spread out the work over multiple weeks or months if I wanted to, or I can very easily change the start and the finish date of this particular task to a different month, right? So as a resource manager or a functional manager, someone that either has a responsibility of assigning resources to projects, I can do some what-if analysis, or maybe you have the responsibility of balancing over allocations and you need to be able to visualize the impact of those the staffing reallocations. You can do that very easily here within EPM Live. And again, keep in mind we're interacting directly with data that lives essentially within SharePoint. So in terms of the platform and in terms of where the data resides, it's all within SharePoint. And what we've done is we've skinned SharePoint in a way where you can actually interact with it and perform some what-if analysis, which is very, very cool. Okay, so so that's the Resource Center, and then coming back to the Project Center here. Actually, as a matter of fact, I want to go to the Risk Center because I'm going to go ahead and create a risk. And what I want to do, just to finish off the rest of this demonstration, I'll create a risk and I'll hand it off to Michelle, and she'll tell us a little bit more about the workflows that are enabled to help with risk management, risk mitigation, and issue tracking. So we'll go ahead and create a new risk because risks and issues, those things do happen during the course of the project. So we want to give project teams the opportunity to be able to track them and manage them along the way. And we're going to go ahead and assign this to Steve Masters. And we'll say it's a high priority. We're doing a mobile apps upgrade. We have hardware that's on back order, so we definitely need to take care of this sooner rather than later. Let's say that it starts today, and I'd like to see this get done within 24 hours.
Hey, Matt, real quickly.
Yep.
Hey, Matt, can you do that from the Xbox site, just because it has more data in it that can really show what's going on in that particular project?
Okay, perfect. Let me do that. So
and again, just because that site is completely, has actual data in it that's been running. Gotcha.
So create a new risk here. And then just so that for the audience benefit, you can actually see there's a variety of different projects that we can create these risks and issues for. The other option is we can go directly into the workspace itself, in this case Xbox DVD, and we can create the risk there so it automatically inherits ownership on that particular risk. So you can create it at the highest level, which is where we're at, the parent site, or we can create it down at the children's site. So a lot of flexibility there. The beauty about that is regardless of where you create it, it all aggregates to the highest level. And let's see, where's the Xbox DVD project? There it is. Okay, so we'll go hardware, back order. And Michelle, is there anyone in particular that we should assign this to, or just go ahead and give it to Steve Masters?
Yep, Steve Masters, and again, anybody you assign it to, K2 will route it to that person specifically.
Perfect. Start today, and then we'll finish it tomorrow. And then, of course, you can include description. You can include a risk mitigation plan. Again, using the native facilities within SharePoint. So again, stuff that you're already familiar with, you can attach maybe a file or a risk mitigation plan if you wanted to. And then of course, the other thing that you could also do as well is if you wanted to go ahead and assign someone, you can also do find the right resource, or you can check resource availability, which basically brings you back to that same resource center that we saw earlier, where you can pull up, select your resources and see when they're available, and if you want to assign this item to them. So pretty cool stuff there. And we're going to go ahead and just say save. And the trigger I want here is just date, right, Michelle? I think that's fine. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and say save.
Yeah. Yep.
And so now that we've got our new risk, this is where, obviously K2 really takes over. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Michelle.
Great, thanks, Matt. So as he entered that risk, and really because anytime that project was created, that project site was created by K2, it was workflow enabled. So any of those lists that are inside of that project or any of those projects are workflow enabled, which means as he entered a risk, K2 captured the fact that he entered a risk, and now K2 picked that task up, or picked that event up, and has sent that out to the appropriate user. In our case, we should probably see that task assigned to Steve Masters here. If we go to our work area, or even our K2 work list, anywhere our K2 work list exists, you can see that we have now a new risk management to resolve that risk. So I can go ahead and take a look at that view flow again real quickly. And again, K2 is not specific to any process. So we've now just kicked off another process because there was a new risk created, and now we've done some assessment of that risk. So we actually calculated that risk based on a KPI that was presented. So based on that KPI, we determined that that risk is within that range, so we can go ahead and resolve that or mitigate that risk. You can also see the other path. So if that risk was greater than 20%, this is where we might want to go to that executive approval. And that executive approval might actually determine, this is a project stopper. Let's kick off a brand new process to determine what do we really need to do with this type of a risk. So in our case, we can do some of that functionality here. Now, because we've already looked at how we action tasks and whatnot, I can go ahead and open up that task. But at this point, I actually want to go ahead and show you one of the designers within K2. This is the K2 Studio designer that allows you to build those processes. Again, there are 3 different designers, the one in SharePoint, K2 Studio, and Visual Studio. But it's all very graphical and visual. And we're looking right now at the project request approval. We can see that business sponsor, finance sponsor. And also now we take a look at that risk management process that we have available to us, where we can actually go in and take a look at how this process was built, what tasks are we getting created, calculation of those risks, etc. Now let's actually look at that for the project request approval and look at the how we calculated that business sponsor. So I can go into one of these wizards, and again, everything is wizard-based for those of you that are not familiar with K2. We've got an approve and decline action, but you can see the outcomes are approved, decline, and it's greater than budget. So I actually have an extra line coming out of one of my boxes that evaluates the user actually chose approve, and that estimated budget is greater than the average budget. And again, this takes away the need for that user to have to go figure out what the average budget is and as it compares to the existing estimated budget. This is where K2 can really come into play to integrate with those line of business systems. And there was a good question on the Q&A panel just now about, is this available within Blackpoint or is it Black Pearl? For those of you that are familiar with the 2 different products, Blackpoint is specific to SharePoint. Black Pearl is the extension, or allows you to extend into your enterprise. So everything we've showed you today is available within Blackpoint. So being able to create project sites, being able to do things like average budgets. And again, that's because we allow you to do that with things like inline functions that allow you to create, do things like perform average or calculations. If you're interested in seeing an actual K2 Black Pearl Blackpoint demo, I invite you to attend one of our webinars that are held on Tuesdays to see how we actually create tasks and processes that do quite a bit of calculations and such. But in this case, again, I wanted to come back to the risk management to show you what that process looks like. The number of event wizards available, so I can drag and drop onto the canvas, maybe an email event. So if we reach that budget limit or that risk, we want to make sure we send an email. And here's that drag and drop kind of interface that allows you to drag information on the from field, or I can type in admin@denolix.com. And again, I can drag and drop as well. If I want to do those calculations, you can see a number of out-of-the-box functions, if you will, math functions, regular expressions. This is extensible too. So if you have a custom function that determines who approvers are based on project types and where they are in a certain region, maybe you already have that piece of logic written. You can actually expose that into these designers using this inline function, and it becomes very graphical. So I'll just kind of drag one of those options onto the canvas and show you what I mean by that. And again, this doesn't make sense for the subject line, but I'm going to add it anyway. Here's what that would look like. So we've got a nice function that pops up that says we can go ahead and pass in the average, and it'll pass in a value, and K2 will calculate the average of that. So again, being able to do simple and complex workflows, even when involved adding calculations without having to write any code, and that's really what K2's strength is the ability to do those kinds of processes without having to write code. All right, so instead of going in and actioning the task, because we've seen that about 3 times today, and again, it's just opening up the task and actioning that task based on information we see, I'm going to go ahead and, as we're getting near our closing time, pull up our slide deck here and just kind of walk through what we saw today, as well as answer any questions that might come up. So again, what we saw today was the portfolio management process with EPM Live and what you can do with that product, and how we integrated that together with K2, really allowing visibility into those project requests to allow for improved decision making, again with automatic task allocation and that final project creation based on those assessments. From the risk management perspective, the K2 and EPM Live solution that we created, or example we created, helps stakeholders proactively mitigate risks by giving accurate visibility into those risks. So instead of that risk happening and we hear about it 2 months later, you're hearing about it right now because you've received a task, an email that indicates so, and K2 behind the scenes helps based on calculating KPIs to make sure it was sent to the right person for that particular process. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Q&A slide, Matt, as well. So if you want to ask any questions, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt to go ahead and moderate those questions.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Michelle. All right, so if you want to go ahead and ask a question, there's two options. You can either we can either open up the phone lines, or you can use the Q&A panel. So we invite you to use either one. We do have a few minutes, so I think about 5 minutes to be exact. So we'll spend the next 5 minutes just hanging tight and waiting for questions to come in. And I think we might actually have one in the Q&A panel. So give me a second while I pull this up here. Okay, and it looks like you've actually gotten to some of the questions already, right, Michelle, in the Q&A panel? Yeah, it looks like these ones have been answered.
Yes, and specifically those questions are around Black Point and Black Pearl.
Okay, perfect. All right, I believe this one might actually be a question for you, Michelle. Is K2 an option or add-on? How is it priced?
So K2, from what we showed you today, K2 and EPM Live are two separate products, and working together, they provide you this kind of solution. So K2 is priced in a couple of manners, either by server or by user, so you can price it depending on how many processes you're running, how many users are involved in that process. And really, it'd probably be best to have a discussion with one of our sales reps to make sure that you're given the correct information around, which option you should take for that. And I think we have some a deck here, a screen here that shows some contact information for that as well. And Matt, if you want to go ahead and change to that next slide.
Sure thing. With
our contact information. Another thing is if you want to try K2, and I'm sure EPM Live has some similar option to do so, if you want to actually try K2 and get your hands on it and see about building processes, whether they're integrated with EPM Live or otherwise, we do have a Try Now website that allows you to sign up for that. We'll create an instance of K2 for you, and you can go log in and create processes.
All right, perfect. So this question actually is kind of a follow-up to the K2 question. Can K2 be used as a SaaS solution? I can speak to the EPM Live perspective. Yes, EPM Live is SaaS enabled. You want to go ahead and take that question from the K2 perspective, Michelle?
Yeah, at this point, K2 is not offered as a SaaS offering. However, if you want to have a discussion about what are some of the options for purchasing or licensing K2, please feel free to give us a shout, and we'll have that conversation.
All right, cool. Next question in the Q&A panel is, what are the key differences between this and SharePoint 2010, Project Server, and the Microsoft EPM solution? That's definitely a question we can certainly take offline. There's a lot of key differences. Obviously, if you were to look at this particular solution on paper as it stands side by side with Project Server, I mean, they offer the same set of capabilities. The biggest difference, however, is, and there's a lot of them, but the biggest difference is the fact that we're doing it natively within SharePoint. And it presents a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom, and certainly allows us to embrace a lot more methodologies and a lot more work items. So certainly a lot of benefits to going with the SharePoint solution, but the Microsoft EPM solution is a great solution, and I'd be more than happy to take that question offline because there's obviously a lot of differences between our two products and a lot of advantages to go with ours, and even with EPM, there's a lot of advantages as well. So I could take that one offline. And then the last question here that's in the Q&A panel: how are the project documents managed in EPM, or is this another session? So to answer that question, we're fully integrated within SharePoint. So SharePoint has its own document management and artifact management facility, and we essentially take advantage of that. So in terms of what we're offering along the lines of document management, we really haven't extended the SharePoint document management capabilities, nor are we actually configuring or delivering anything to manage documents. We're taking advantage of what's already in there within SharePoint. So if you're using SharePoint today and you're using the document management capabilities, those are the same capabilities we offer within EPM Live, just because we integrate with SharePoint, right? But if there's anything in particular around the document management sort of process that you're looking for, or any questions in particular around your requirements around managing documents, I could certainly take that offline, and we can talk a little bit more about that and see how EPM Live and or K2 can help with some of that. Michelle, I believe some of the stuff that K2 is doing as well does, as far as like document routing and approval, obviously K2 can handle a lot of that, right?
Right, absolutely. And again, because K2 is not process specific and the deep integration with SharePoint, whether you're moving documents from a document library to another document library in another site, or even converting it to a PDF to store as part of a records management process, definitely a lot of capability around document management. And we actually do have a couple of webinars that show that specifically from a K2 process line. But again, it's definitely available in the K2 world.
Okay, and then we'll take these last two questions, and any ones that we don't get to we'll certainly take offline. But one is around agile planning, sprint planning, and task burn downs. This looks like an EPM Live question here. The one thing that I didn't show, we actually do have an agile planner. So we do have, and that's one of the other differences about us compared to Microsoft EPM, is that we support different methodologies, and so we actually have an agile application that you can run within EPM Live and SharePoint that comes with an agile planner, backlogs, a sprint planning. So that whole agile methodology we've been able to embrace, and we actually have that within an application that you can install within SharePoint. So that's certainly something we can take offline, and what I'll do is my information's here. So if you want to go ahead and contact me, you can, or if not, I can reach out to you afterwards, and we can talk a little bit more about the or at least help you crystallize the differences between Project Server and EPM Live. And then the last question, I believe, is for you, Michelle. It's around K2 International support for European date formats. Is there support for that?
Yes, there definitely is support for that. And again, K2 is customers worldwide, so we definitely have that question asked and definitely do support that.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of today's session. We're just a few minutes past the hour. And I guess at this point, we want to go ahead, and both Michelle and I would like to thank you for the time and for hanging on and for your questions. And again, there's a couple of questions we'd like to take offline, so we'll be following up with you. But in the meantime, if you'd like to reach out to us directly, we encourage you to do that as well. And with that, I'd like to conclude today's session, and I'd like to thank Tammy and Michelle on the K2 side for joining us today.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.